Happy 35th anniversary to the release of Tim Burton's 1989 classic, Batman.
Where did he get those wonderful toys?
My life is really complex.
Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
A hearty welcome to one and all. We're back in the car for episode 222 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me for this Sunday afternoon drive here in New York. Another hot day, but not quite as steamy. This is more normal, seasonal average temperature kind of hot. I mean, it is late June in New York, so you're going to get a little toasty every now and then. We're going to skip all that promotional jazz, and we're going to get right to the meat of the episode. Today is the 35th anniversary of Tim Burton's Batman, released on this day, 1989. And this is a film that in the still very much pre-internet era had enormous buzz. People were talking about this film since Jack Nicholson was announced was going to be playing Jack Napier / the Joker, and Michael Keaton as Batman, and that Tim Burton was going to be directing the film. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding the casting of Michael Keaton because, I mean, Batman in the comics, he looked more like the TV iteration of Batman, Adam West. Adam West kind of had that lantern-jawed look that was, I mean, according to a lot of the purists, that it was important, it was necessary. Then again, more than a decade later, Sam Raimi decided to go with a better actor and a more believable Peter Parker than somebody who looks like a jacked Abercrombie & Fitch model. He went with Tobey Maguire. I did not have a problem with the casting of Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, Batman. And history has shown that the naysayers were wrong, much as they were wrong about Daniel Craig is not Bond.com. Daniel Craig sucks as Bond.com. No, he didn't. No, he wasn't. Daniel Craig was a terrific James Bond. And Michael Keaton, you can argue the Christian Bale movies because of Christopher Nolan and the scripts and Morgan Freeman and Rutger Hauer and Anne Hathaway and all of the different supporting people. You can argue that the Bale Batman films are better, but I believe that Michael Keaton, from a cinematic perspective, has been the best Batman. That's just opinion. And I really like his performance, even though it's not an actor's role. And it's one of the reasons why Keaton left before the third film would be completed. You know, he started off and supposedly walked off the set right at the beginning because he was tired of not even being the star of what was ostensibly his movie. But for all of the buzz and all of the advance press and the fact that lines were around the block and people were so excited for this movie months in advance, and it's hard to imagine for a younger person a time in which people would go to the movies and pay their hard-earned money, and I'm not making jokes, pay their hard-earned money just to see a trailer. And are we going to stay for the movie? I really don't give a shit. Because there was no other way. And when word dropped that at a certain point, late in 1988, I believe, and into early 1989, there were certain movies that were going to be hitting theaters where the Batman teaser was going to be attached. There are people that dropped $15, 1989. And I understand if you have the money, but I don't know that many people who have the kind of money where, let's say, $40 or $50 is like just taking a leak. I still don't know people that would throw it away. Yes, you can afford it. It's not really the point. But a lot of people apparently just were so excited to see that trailer that they convinced themselves they were going to the movies when in fact they were just going to see the trailer, and then they went on with their evening doing whatever. Far be it for me to judge, but it shows the level of excitement in an era in which you could not download. You could not illegally do anything because there was nothing to illegally do or not do. I saw the trailer for the first time for Batman. I don't remember what movie, but I know I saw it. It may have screened with Arnold's Red Heat. I don't know. But the film wasn't ready. They didn't even have the musical score. Danny Elfman's kind of iconic musical score for Batman was not in the original teaser. But it certainly got me excited to see the movie, as it did so many people. And in the history of what I would consider summer blockbusters, which were major event films, like that they were considered to be, because a lot of times Hollywood and the press at large, whether it was in the day Premiere Magazine, whether it was Entertainment Weekly, whether it was Daily Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, whether it was even magazines such as American Film or Film Comment, just speculating, there were a number of summers where the prognosticators got it wrong as far as what is expected to be the biggest movie of the summer. And sometimes the biggest movie of the summer ends up being not the biggest, but still an enormous hit. Like in 1994, the predictions were not that Forrest Gump was going to be the biggest movie of the summer. Most people felt that True Lies, which ended up being an enormous hit, but very few people could have constructed a scenario in 1994 in which True Lies was only the third highest grossing film, but still exceeded expectations because nobody saw Forrest Gump doing what it did. And you don't know with The Lion King, people weren't 100% sure. But when you go back to Batman, and obviously Terminator 2 was, in Arnold's words, months before release, the biggest movie of the summer. I get to play a good Terminator. Kind of gave that away. I don't know that he was supposed to, but it didn't really matter in the end. But summer of '89 was an enormous summer with so many blockbusters. From Ghostbusters 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Parenthood, the Rick Moranis triumvirate, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Star Trek V, which kind of flamed out. Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, which was a big movie. Karate Kid 3. Use the crane, Danny boy. Use the crane, Danny boy. But Batman, despite the big hitters, and despite the advance buzz on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which held, this might be as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark, and if you ask me, it's almost as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is an extraordinary film. But Batman still had the most buzz, and my sense as a 15-year-old, and you can ask Gen Xers, doesn't matter if they're from New York or not, but people in my age bracket, the excitement level for me, for Batman, was higher than any other film that summer. License to Kill, the Bond film, which I absolutely loved, Timothy Dalton, Robert Davi, Wayne Newton, Talisa Soto, Carrie Lowell. Man, what a great fucking movie that was. But I got to see Batman on its opening night, the Friday that it opened, which I assume was June 23rd. I don't actually remember that. I have a good memory, but it isn't that precise. I'm not, I'm not one of those people that can tell you what I did on a certain day just because my memory is so absurd. But with all of the buzz, and there were a lot of critics in advance that had said this film they deliver the goods. Burton fucking nails it. The music is terrific. And the performances, the effects work. Because most of the effects in this film are practical effects. There is not that much. Yes, there's green screen, and there is that kind of, maybe not green screen, but there are some computer effects, and there are some miniatures, models, and I believe some matte paintings, but that's normal. That's not CGI. Most of the effects in this film were done during production. Whether it's a squib, whether it's an explosion, there were a lot of effects done during production. And it has the feel of, it feels real. It doesn't, you're not ever taken out of the fiction by looking at a computer. Matrix Reloaded, which I love, the Burly Brawl, where you very clearly see that that's not Keanu Reeves. It's the 2003 best that a computer can do to mimic Keanu Reeves and Agent Smith. But I saw with my dad at the Syosset Triplex, which I think is now an Office Max or an Office Depot in the kind of Woodbury Syosset area. And it was a packed house. And my memory of it is that everyone in the audience was with it. I don't know if everyone loved it, but it seemed that everyone in the audience was with the story and was into it and was just being thrilled, because there's a lot of stuff in that movie that happens that you're not really expecting. You know the Joker is going to be awful, and that you figured that Jack was going to bring it, and he does. But the kind of mechanics of what the Joker does, a lot of it was unexpected. The whole thing with polluting the household products, and we're going to kill some people and not everybody, and I'm going to give money away. There are a number of great scenes within the film that were unexpected. And Kim Basinger is an actress that there are a lot of movies that she was in that I absolutely love. I've never thought she was a particularly good actress, if we're being honest. But there are some people at certain points in their career, when they're on screen, magic. And Kim Basinger is one of those special people who wasn't necessarily a master thespian, but in the right role, such as this movie, even though she doesn't really have much to do. But you look at her in the kind of renegade Bond film with Connery, Never Say Never Again. She's terrific. And you look at her in The Natural with Redford. I would argue that's her best film performance, even though she ended up winning the Oscar for LA Confidential in '97, the year of Titanic. What she does in The Natural is something else. But Kim Basinger in this movie is so likable. The character of Vicky Vale is such a genuinely good person. And Bruce Wayne is not a heel. But some of the stuff that he does, where he doesn't really, I don't mean to hurt you, like that kind of shit. But you feel it, because Vicky is such a bright, effervescent, good-hearted person. And I actually think that her and Michael Keaton had really good chemistry, better than you would normally find when it's a sort of, I don't want to say a throwaway romance, but the movie isn't really about the romance between Vicky Vale and Bruce Wayne. But I like the film. I love Michael Gough as Alfred. He was so good as Alfred. And we think about the different wonderful actors who played Alfred, whether it was Michael Caine, so good, Sir Michael Caine, whether it was Jeremy Irons, another fucking home run hitter, an Oscar winner himself in the DC, the Ben Affleck verse. He was really good as Alfred. It's a different interpretation of Alfred, certainly, than Sir Michael Caine had. I love Robert Wall as the kind of nosy reporter. He gets a lot of laughs. Hey, Knox, can I get a grant? I mean, all that stuff was just howlingly funny. Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon. Think of the different iterations of Gordon. Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent. Compare him to Aaron Eckhart 2 decades later in The Dark Knight. Big difference. Or even with Tommy Lee Jones 6 years later in Batman Forever as a different iteration again of Harvey Dent. But I was thrilled by Batman. I had an idea of what it was going to be about, but it's not like today where if you want spoilers, if you want to read the screenplay, you can. Sam Hamm's screenplay for 1989's Batman is readily available online, and it's a really good script. I mean, really good. The script itself is a little bit darker than what we saw, although certainly Burton did not make this a bright, bouncy, fun Batman Forever, Batman and Robin kind of a film. But he didn't go dark. It's not as dark as what Christopher Nolan did. It has moments in that ballpark, but there is still a more of a cartoony sense to the proceedings. And if you ask me who was a better Joker, Heath Ledger or Jack, I mean, it's so different, it's difficult to say. But Jack did not he was not on autopilot. And I am somebody who is a huge Jack Nicholson fan. But Jack is somebody who is talented enough where he can coast and still get it done. I never sensed Jack coasting in this film. I sensed him in every scene being fully committed to the bit and whatever it was that he was trying to do in the individual scene, whether he's playing off Michael Keaton, whether he's playing off Kim Basinger. Because I feel like Jack ad-libbed. There are certain spots where it doesn't feel like he was following the script, but he makes it, he still sells it. And I love Jack Nicholson's performance. And there are certain films, and I just talked about Chinatown the other day because of its 50th anniversary. If you're a young person who knows Jack Nicholson from The Shining, and maybe you know him, he's the old guy, he still goes to Laker games, whatever. Maybe you know him from The Departed. But to see Nicholson younger, to see Nicholson in his early 50s, giving a performance of just pure electricity in this film, as he does in The Witches of Eastwick. And I disagree with people who say he gives the same performance. No, he doesn't. That's not correct. His character in The Witches of Eastwick is reasonable compared to the Joker. The devil, as presented in The Witches of Eastwick, he can be reasoned with. He can be bargained with. He's not a good guy, but I see the Joker as a much more antagonistic force, a much more purely malevolent force than what we're presented with in Witches of Eastwick and Daryl Van Horn. And Jack's performance, as I've argued, in Witches of Eastwick is very, very solid, and it's a kind of performance in a career, a great all-time legendary career like Jack. It's a performance that's easy to sleep on and not really take stock and say, it's hard to imagine Jack giving a performance that's underrated by history, but Witches of Eastwick is one. Because I feel like for Batman, he did get a ton of acclaim at the time. And there were still people who were shocked by how good he was in that film and how good his performance still plays. Because yes, he laughs and he has his moments where he's fucking around and he's making people smile and all of this stuff, and he's giving away money. But the sneering viciousness is there. And I just love the performance. Much as I appreciate the seriousness, the sincerity, and the conviction of what Michael Keaton does, how he plays Bruce Wayne. I prefer his Bruce Wayne to how Christian Bale plays him. Again, that's the script. It might be how Nolan wanted to, take on the character. Nolan doesn't seem like a guy who is going to, if he doesn't want to have Christian Bale come across as a devil-may-care kind of wastrel playboy, he ain't gonna do it. But the Bruce Wayne of Michael Keaton in 1989 is very serious. He's very focused. He would be very comfortable discussing the tech with Morgan Freeman's character from the Nolan trilogy. Almost, I would say, more so than Christian Bale, who I love. I love Christian Bale. But I feel like Bale made a better Batman than a Bruce Wayne, even though he certainly looks the part. For all the weight gain and weight loss, Christian Bale, obviously a very attractive guy, matinee idol looking guy, more so than Michael Keaton. But Batman 89 grossed more than $410 million in its initial theatrical run. I don't need to tell you, that's a huge take right now. But for 35 years ago, time value of money, inflation adjusted, you're looking at a massive worldwide hit. Made even more money than Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which exceeded expectations. They knew that was going to be huge. It's Spielberg. But it still exceeded expectations. And Do the Right Thing exceeded expectations. I forgot Lethal Weapon 2 exceeded expectations. Many people thought that was better than the first one. Really, of the two big movies in that summer, franchise potential blockbusters, the disappointments were Star Trek V, which it just wasn't good. I believe that's the weakest of the six kind of standalone original cast, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, etc. It's the weakest of the six. I think it's the weakest by a wide margin. The old thing, it's kind of a running gag that the even-numbered ones were all great. 2, 4, and 6, fantastic. I think Star Trek The Motion Picture is a great movie. The director's edition really cleans it up. Star Trek 3, pretty good. 2.5 to 3 stars out of 4. Star Trek 5, 2 stars out of 4. Don't like it. But that one disappointed at the box office. And Karate Kid 3, people were ready for it. The movie just wasn't good. They regressed Daniel LaRusso, as I said in the Karate Kid podcast yesterday. They made him seem like a coward, and he wasn't even a coward when he didn't know karate. So, not good. But Batman, for all of the talk, all of the chatter, exceeded expectations with critics, and it certainly satisfied expectations of audiences. And when I'm running through hugely buzzed blockbusters in various summers, and I'm going to get the summers in the movies right, but I may not get the details of box office gross. But if we start with 1989, this year, Batman, I feel like Die Hard 2, which ended up being an enormous hit, was a hugely buzzed title for summer 1990. Well, I know that it was, but I feel like the biggest buzz title was Dick Tracy, which ended up turning a profit. It made well over 100 million worldwide, but it was kind of considered to be a disappointment. Given the fact that it's a terrific film, it should have done better. It just didn't connect with audiences. Then 91, Terminator 2, far exceeded expectations. And then 92 was not really a huge summer. You had Lethal Weapon 3, which was a big hit, A League of Their Own, big hit. But then you had it was not a, kind of a smashing summer for movies. But then 93, Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, August. That's technically still a summer movie that ended up winning, all the big Oscars, Best Picture, Best Director. 93 was the summer of Jurassic Park. That was certainly the most buzzed about blockbuster. 94, you had films like The Mask and Maverick, but that was also the summer of Lion King and Forrest Gump and True Lies. 95, you have Braveheart. 95 was probably the weakest summer in terms of marquee, movies. 96, you have The Rock, and that was an enormous hit. 97, Face Off, Con Air, both with Nick Cage. So you had this sense and this idea that most summers there was at least one movie, 96 Mission Impossible, Twister, were two of those movies, for example. I thought of The Rock first, where people were ready for them months in advance. And sometimes it just doesn't connect. Twister was an enormous hit. Movie's really not that great. I know they did a reboot and Glenn Powell is ready to go. I love Bill Paxton. Twister's not that good. I saw it day it opened. Mission Impossible came closer, 96, to satisfying the fact that people were going nuts about it since seeing the original teaser like the previous November, as crazy as that is. Arnold's Eraser, 1996 summer also. Now, Batman, for those curious, has been on Max, what used to be HBO Max. It is a DC title, and all of their, as far as I know, all of the DC movies, at least the last time I checked, are available. So you could have yourself a Batman marathon if you so choose. I just think the movie's great. It's one of those films that I like to revisit every few years because it's always entertaining. And even to see how the effects work and the stunt work, how dated is it? And what is the Michael Keaton Batman in that film? What is his power level? What is his strength level relative to the Batfleck, as they like to joke around, Ben's version of Batman, and Christian Bale? I don't know. Is there really an answer to that question? But I will say also, before I close this episode, because I say no spoilers, if you haven't seen Batman 89 and you've come this far in this episode, just see it. I'm not giving you any more information. The movie is just fucking great. You'll love it. But there was a lot of chatter before The Flash came out. There was a lot of chatter about Michael Keaton putting back on the cowl to play an older Batman in a movie that ends up, spoiler alert, not only having Ben Affleck, which we knew that Ben was going to be in that movie because it is the Ezra Miller Flash from Justice League. It's that narrative, the Zack Snyder angle, if you will. But we were told that there was going to be a timeline breach, a multiversal a multiversal breach, and we were going to meet Michael Keaton's Batman from the Burton films. Well, the first two Tim Burton films. Batman Returns, of course, with Danny DeVito as the Penguin, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Never been a fan. Christopher Walken doing Christopher Walken things. Never been a fan. So film looks great. The production is unbelievable. Don't think the movie's that good. What can I tell you, right? That's the way it goes. But when I saw The Flash, and there were friends of mine that told me it was terrible, but then there were people that said, if you're a fan of the comic, if you're a fan of the TV show The Flash, it's not going to work. You're not going to like it. But if you're just somebody who, let's say you enjoyed Zack Snyder's Justice League, we're not even going to talk about Joss Whedon, no. But if you're somebody who enjoyed Zack Snyder's Justice League, there is no reason to think that you won't enjoy The Flash. So a number of people told me that, and or I saw it on various message boards, comment threads for different movies on Instagram, whatever it might be. So I saw The Flash when it premiered on HBO Max, and I loved it. Unequivocally, absolutely loved it. I love the way that they worked the multiverse angle in a similar way to what they did with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and also Spider-Man No Way Home. But I highly recommend The Flash for anybody who likes the Michael Keaton Batman, the Tim Burton, whether or not you love Batman Returns, a lot of people do. Michael Keaton really nails it, playing a very believable, older, wounded spiritually Bruce Wayne and Batman. He is so good that even if you don't altogether love the film, and there were some cameos, people were a little bit miffed because they kind of did a CGI Christopher Reeve, they did a CGI Nicolas Cage, and Cage didn't know what was going on because he shot a couple of days of footage, and then they ended up just CGIing him anyway. They could have done that without him shooting footage. Despite that, The Flash is worth seeing, and Keaton's role is a lot bigger than you would think. And I just love the way they brought George Clooney's Batman. It's been a running gag for Clooney ever since Batman and Robin. Although box office gross was not terrible, film is awful. It didn't do anywhere near what they expected. That was summer '97, the summer of Face Off and Con Air. The Flash was a great entertainment, at least an 8 out of 10 if you ask me. And Michael Keaton is pretty much the second lead for about 45 minutes of the movie. It is not a cameo. He is a big part of that film. And it was so great to see him back in the cow. You want to get nuts? Come on. Let's get nuts. 35 years ago today, Tim Burton's Batman opened in theaters. And I love Tim Burton. My favorite Tim Burton movie, oddly enough, is actually Ed Wood with Johnny Depp as the worst filmmaker in the history of cinema, Edward D. Wood Jr. It was a 1994 film. It won Martin Landau an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. That's one that a lot of people have slept on and probably haven't seen. Batman 1989, directed by Tim Burton and starring Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Kim Basinger, Robert Wall, Pat Hingle, and Billy D. Williams. This has been episode number 222 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for taking this Sunday drive home with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 223 real soon. Until then, peace.